America is hurting tonight from the stunning new unemployment numbers, at least 17 million now out of work, to the still climbing death toll. Another 2,000 lives lost nationally since yesterday as this wildfire of misery rapidly burns across the country. Yet tonight the trend is clear. The curve is flattening, and that brings its own challenges of keeping Americans focused on what's working. Our team has a lot to tell you tonight. Gabe Gutierrez starts us off now from New York.
With flags at half-staff throughout New York on the governor's orders, tonight a dramatic drop. New hospitalizations and ICU admissions are at their lowest level since the coronavirus crisis began. Authorities say it's clear widespread social distancing is working.
We're flattening the curve so far.
But it was the state's deadliest day. Again, 799 people in just 24 hours, many of them the most vulnerable, who'd been sick the longest. So far, more than 7,000 have been lost in New York State alone. For perspective, less than 3,000 were killed on 9/11.
It was a silent explosion that just ripples through society with the same randomness, the same evil that we saw on 9/11.
At a city cemetery, workers in protective gear are now burying nearly 5 times more unclaimed bodies a week. A new study finds that the coronavirus began to circulate in New York in mid-February and came here largely from Europe, not China. At the epicenter's epicenter, Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, where 2 weeks ago we saw a line for testing stretching down the block, today we saw virtually no line at all, just one small sign that hospitals like these are seeing fewer new cases. In Manhattan, plans for an emergency field hospital at St. John the Divine, one of the world's largest cathedrals, have been scrapped. It doesn't appear the extra beds will be needed. But cases have exploded on nearby Long Island, and doctors are warning New Yorkers not to be complacent.
It does not mean that it's a time for us to take our foot off the gas. It does not mean that it's time for us to let up. In fact, it's a time for us to double down.
We've spoken with ER Dr. Craig Spencer, an Ebola survivor, since the pandemic began.
Seeing people die day after day, many people who were fine just the day before, even the morning of, is really, really tough.
Among the lives lost, Hal Wilner, a music producer for Saturday Night Live. Dr. Guido Volcovici inspired his daughter to become a reporter. Richard Weber worked as a lawyer and civil rights advocate. His son says the loss still doesn't seem real.
He was someone who always did the right thing when, even when nobody was looking.
Still, there are many signs of hope, including the former Army medic from Virginia, Steve Colosi, who said goodbye to his wife and parked his RV outside the home of her sick elderly parents in New Jersey as they battled COVID-19.
It was a no-brainer for me. They were wonderful. When I got back from Iraq, it makes me a little... We had to sell our house. And we moved in with them for 2 years. And, we took care of them, but they took care of us.
Now, he's been taking care of them for 2 weeks.
I wouldn't have made it. I was ready to give up.
And tonight, their turnaround is remarkable. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, New York.
I'm Miguel Almaguer. Tonight, amid some signs of progress in states like New York and California, several others battling the coronavirus are just now diving deeper into crisis. In Illinois, where the death toll is mounting, the largest convention center in the country has become a field hospital, bracing for a peak in cases likely weeks away. But for Michael Bain and his family,
it's not like the flu. It makes you feel like you're going to die.
The life and death struggle already awry.
Wait, what if I'm not days away from being released from the hospital? What if I'm days away from, not being alive anymore?
The Cook County Jail in Chicago is believed to be the nation's largest known source of infections in the U.S., the roughly 400 cases there surpassing the deadly cluster in Washington state and the early explosion of cases in New Rochelle, New York. In Colorado, where officials warn morgues could be overrun with bodies, Ernesto Castro was deemed the sickest patient in the state. The 35-year-old spent nearly a week in a coma on a ventilator, becoming an incredible story of survival finally leaving the hospital to rejoin his family at home.
I'm blessed to be alive. I'm thankful every day to God that he gave me the second opportunity.
As new infections explode in Louisiana, officials in some areas say they have more cases per capita than any other state. But the governor of Michigan, where more than 20,000 are sick, also calls their situation dire. In Detroit alone, the Henry Ford Health System already diagnosing more than 4,100 coronavirus patients. The average hospital stay, 6.5 days, while in the ICU, the most critical patients spend over a week.
The number of deaths has increased and will continue to increase.
With long lines outside food banks around the country, several cities are rolling out new precautions to keep shoppers and workers safe after a handful of supermarket employees died from the virus. In some areas, orders to stay home and social distancing appear to be working, lowering the projected national death toll.
And it looks more like the 60,000 than the 100 to 200,000. But having said that, we better be careful that we don't say, okay, we're doing so well, we could pull back.
Encouraging signs amid the crisis, giving so many reason to cheer. In Arkansas, a standing ovation for David Williams, who spent days on a ventilator and is now reunited with family heading home. Across the country, Angela Primachenko was diagnosed with the virus 33 weeks into her pregnancy. In a coma for 2 days, her labor was induced.
We're absolutely terrified. It was so scary. I wouldn't want anyone to go through that.
Today, her sister says she'll meet her healthy newborn baby, Ava, for the first time on FaceTime.
The darkest nights could turn into the brightest days if we just keep going.
It's another good reminder there are so many stories of survival out there. Meantime, here in Los Angeles, the mayor says at park entrances all across the city, uniformed police officers will be standing guard to make sure there are no large gatherings ahead of this Easter weekend. He says the city cannot afford any new clusters of coronavirus cases. Lester?
Yes, so much hope out there tonight, but we all have to stay engaged. Thank you, Miguel. There is particular worry tonight about Americans living in nursing homes. Their families now in constant fear as the virus sweeps through many facilities. Here's Katie Beck.
Meg Medina lives just 2 miles from her 87-year-old Aunt Issa's nursing home. But right now, she couldn't feel further away from her.
I know that staying away from her is the best thing to do, the safest thing to do, but right now when you see all the death going on around her and the illness going on around her, it doesn't feel safe.
Her aunt, a resident at the Canterbury Rehabilitation and Healthcare Center in Virginia, where an ongoing outbreak has claimed the lives of 39 residents, a third of all COVID-19 fatalities in the state.
They're doing everything that they can to keep these individuals safe.
Canterbury says the care of these loved ones is our primary focus.
Well, I am holding my breath because my aunt is one of the few people at the center who's tested negative.
But 80 other residents here and 25 healthcare workers have tested positive for COVID-19, a growing hotspot scenario that's plaguing nursing homes and care facilities across the country.
After outbreaks at 21 facilities across North Carolina, the governor ordering new restrictions on nursing homes and care facilities. And at this veterans home in New Jersey, help from the National Guard after reporting 37 COVID-19 related deaths. 6 more fatalities at this rehab center in California. Precious Turner's uncle is also at the Canterbury facility. She praises the staff, but worries for her uncle, who has brain damage and tested positive.
I'm just thinking about how lonely he is right now, not being able to have family around.
An anxious time for families with restricted contact to their elderly loved ones.
When all of this is over and you finally do get to see her, what will you tell her?
I just want to sit with her and just be with her and just make sure she knows how much we love her.
Katie Beck, NBC News, Richmond, Virginia.
Tonight, an unprecedented turn in the unemployment disaster. Another 6.6 million Americans applying for jobless benefits last week alone. Millions more may be uncounted because they can't get through. Here's Tom Costello.
From coast to coast tonight, the faces of a deeply personal unemployment crisis. we were already living paycheck to paycheck, so it just kept snowballing.
I never thought that I would be out of a job.
All the bills are coming and they're calling me, and I have no money to pay for that.
The worsening unemployment picture is simply staggering, skyrocketing in just a month from a 50-year low to nearly 17 million seeking benefits in just the last 3 weeks. But that number is most certainly underreported. Many, like Kelly Thompson, a single mom in Texas, have been unable to file.
It's very frustrating and it's very overwhelming.
Laid off from her job as a store manager 3 weeks ago, she's been trying ever since to get through.
I've tried at 1 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m. I've set my alarm to try to do it at different times. I've done it right before 8 a.m. when they open, and there's just no getting through.
The problem, states don't have the staff to handle the unprecedented demand. Phone lines are jammed and websites are crashing nationwide.
The technology in this whole situation is not good. I was born in the late 1970s, and so was our mainframe system.
Kansas partnering with Amazon and New York with Google to reboot their systems today. The good news for everyone:
whenever you sign up, your benefits are going to be retroactive.
And the government says those $1,200 relief checks should start landing in direct deposit accounts next week. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve staging a massive financial rescue.
I've never seen anything like this.
Pumping an unprecedented $2.3 trillion to support businesses, states, and cities.
This is what the great fiscal power of the United States is for.
For Allison Jesse in Maryland, it can't come soon enough. Recently unemployed before the pandemic and now unable to get through to extend her benefits.
I'm going through my savings, and so I really need to figure out how to get some money coming in.
For those who don't have direct deposit for the relief checks, the IRS is planning to open a new portal as soon as next week, allowing them to sign up.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.